Hey everyone, welcome back to your local haunt. First things first, I'd like to apologise for the wait in uploads. It's been very chaotic in the household at the minute. I've just secured a new job, we went on our honeymoon, obviously Christmas is around the corner. It's just been a bit of a chaotic time, but we're back. Hopefully uploads are going to come a lot more consistently now. So, I'm Scott, your host, and tonight we're not heading to a crumbling castle or a lonely mall. We're going to an ordinary semi-detached house on an ordinary street in an ordinary Yorkshire town. Number 30, East Drive, Pontefract. Looks like somewhere your nan might live, to be honest. Pebble-dashed, neatly trimmed lawn, milk bottles on the step, but what's inside that house has been described by investigators, witnesses, and even priests as one of the most violent hauntings in Europe. For over 50 years, the spirit, or whatever it is, has been terrorising anyone who sets foot inside. The locals call him Fred. History calls him the Black Monk of Pontefract. So grab your torch, and maybe don't turn your back on the stairs. So let's set the scene. It's 1966 in Pontefract, a mining town in West Yorkshire. Gritty, modest, nothing fancy. The house at 30 East Drive was home to the Pritchard family. Parents, Jean and Joe, their son Philip, aged 15, and daughter Diane, aged 12. They'd moved in just a few years before, one of the many young families starting fresh on the newly built Chequerfield estate. There was nothing strange about it until August, when Jean and Joe went on holiday, leaving Grandma Sarah Kelly in charge of the kids. And that's not just where the horror starts. The first odd thing that happened in the kitchen, Mrs. Kelly noticed. A fine white powder falling from mid-air. Not the ceiling, not the cupboards. Just there. It dusted the counters like snow. Moments later, pools of water began forming on the floor. Perfectly round, clean and cold. Council inspectors were called. They thought it was plumbing, but the pipes were just bone dry. That same evening, a loud bang shook the kitchen. The back of a heavy dresser rattled. Then the tea dispenser started spitting tea leaves across the counter as if someone had tipped it over, though no one had touched it. By the time Jean and Joe returned home, the activity had stopped. But it wouldn't stay that quiet for long. Over the following weeks, things escalated. Lights flickered on and off. Footsteps echoed on the landing when no one was upstairs. Doors opened and closed on their own, sometimes gently, and sometimes with such force that the frame splintered. And it wasn't just noises. Things moved. Objects slid across tables. Photos turned upside down. A heavy grandfather clock began swaying and then toppled without warning. And always the disturbances seemed to come in bursts, sudden, violent, and followed by a dead, suffocating silence. The family called in relatives and neighbours to witness it, and they weren't disappointed. One evening, in front of several guests, a pot plant lifted clear off the floor and hurled itself across the room. A cupboard door slammed repeatedly while everyone stood several feet away. At first they joked, called it Fred, Yorkshire humour. You name it, it loses power, right? Except Fred didn't find it funny. He got really pissed off. The entity then began focusing on Diane, the 12-year-old daughter. It would tug her hair, yank her bedclothes, even lift her off the ground. Once her brother Philip saw her get dragged violently up the stairs by her collar, screaming and kicking. When they reached her, red finger-shaped bruises marked her throat. At night her room shook. Crosses turned upside down, doors locked from the inside. Neighbours heard screams, bangs, crashes, enough that people stopped walking past the house after dark. And then came the apparitions. Family members and visitors began seeing a dark shadow, humanoid, cloaked. Sometimes it appeared at the end of the hallway, other times standing in doorways silent, just watching. Descriptions were consistent though. A tall figure, hooded and wearing what looked like a monk's robe. Some said they saw his face, all pale and distorted. The mouth was twisted with a grin, whereas others said it had no face at all. The air around it was freezing cold. One witness claimed they saw it glide from one wall straight through to the next, leaving behind the smell of rotten flesh. And from that moment, Fred became the Black Monk. By the late 1960s, 30 East Drive was a war zone. Lights would turn on and off in full daylight. Drawers opened by themselves. Heavy furniture moved across the floor while the family watched. Once, the entire living room carpet was pulled up, corner by corner, while everyone stood in the doorway. Objects vanished and then reappeared elsewhere. A framed photo of Diane shattered mid-air, the kettle boiled with no water inside. Visitors felt hands on their shoulders, breath on their necks. A milk jug floated from the table and poured itself onto the floor. And then more people who came to witness it, the stronger it seemed to get. Jean once threw holy water into the air during a particularly violent episode. It hissed as it hit the floorboards like acid on metal. The family called in priests more than once. During one exorcism attempt, the activity exploded. Crucifixes twisted, a chest of drawers slid across the floor, and a heavy candlestick launched itself at the priest. He left mid-prayer and refused to return. The council considered condemning the house, but how do you file a complaint that reads, "Ghost won't stop throwing furniture"? The activity peaked in the early 1970s. The Pritchards tried to ignore it. They even went on holiday just to escape. When they returned, the house was wrecked. Furniture overturned, photos smashed. Food thrown across the kitchen, every surface was coated in a fine black dust. And scrawled across the walls in thick black letters, one phrase repeated over and over: "You're back." From then on, the violence focused solely on Diane. She was thrown from her bed, scratched. Her long hair was tied around the bedpost while she slept, so tightly it took minutes to free her. Family friends witnessed her levitate a full 6 inches above the mattress. They began sleeping downstairs, but even then, they'd wait to find the sofas move in, chairs toppled over, or the family dog just barking madly at an empty corner. The haunting continued for years. Sometimes it would stop for weeks, even months, and then just erupt without warning. And always the same figure. Black robe, silent, and watching. When Diane finally moved out as an adult, the activity seemed to fade, but only a little. Neighbours still reported seeing lights flicker on when the house was empty, bangs from upstairs, shadows moving behind closed curtains. The spirit, it seemed, hadn't gone anywhere. It had just gone quiet, like it was waiting. Decades later, paranormal investigators began studying the house in earnest. Throughout the 80s, 90s and 2000s, dozens of research teams recorded phenomena, cold spots, EVPs, and full object movement on camera. Some reported being pushed, scratched, or having stones thrown at them. During one night in 2010, a team placed marbles on the floor. Several were seen rolling uphill, against gravity. Another group left a crucifix on the table. When they returned minutes later, it was twisted into an inverted position. Thermal cameras recorded temperature drops of 20 degrees in seconds. Voices were whispered into microphones. One investigator claimed to have been slapped hard enough to leave a red mark, though no one was near him. The smell of rotten flesh still appears at random, an odour no amount of cleaning can remove. In one incident, a professional medium entered the house and immediately collapsed, saying she felt a rope tightening around her neck. In the Halloween special of Paranormal Lockdown, esteemed investigators Nick Groff and Katrina Weidman spent 100 hours locked in 30 East Drive, during which they documented numerous visual apparitions, a host of EVP, physical markings on Katrina's body, and the grandfather clock being allegedly pushed towards Nick, almost taking him out. With this being said, paranormal TV shows are just that. Television shows, and will play to the camera whether it be intentional or not. Now, I love paranormal investigation shows, but I have always seen it as entertainment, nothing more. But the connection to the old Pontefract gallows has since been studied. Historical maps confirmed that the execution site once stood near East Drive, possibly beneath the modern estate. Records mention monks executed for their crimes during Henry VIII's reign, one allegedly for murder and blasphemy. Coincidence? Maybe. But the description, a black-robed figure, violent temper, fascination with a young girl, it fits too neatly to ignore. Today, 30 East Drive still stands, unchanged since the 60s. The wallpaper, the furniture, even the old floral sofa remain exactly as the Pritchards left them. It's privately owned now, rented out for overnight investigations. You can stay there yourself, if you're mad enough. But people still report the same activity. Heavy footsteps on the landing, loud bangs from the master bedroom, a black shadow moving between rooms, objects thrown across the kitchen, cold drafts appearing and vanish in seconds. Some guests leave early. Others capture recordings they swear are voices, deep guttural whispers. The same name is often heard on playback. Diane. Even now, neighbours claim to see lights flick on when there's no one inside. One postman said that he refuses to deliver mail through the door after dusk. He said once, the handle turned itself. Whatever lives there, or died there, still hasn't had enough. But 30 East Drive is more than just a haunted house. It's a reminder that horror doesn't need gothic towers or graveyards. Sometimes it lives behind lace curtains and pebble-dashed driveways. The Black Monk of Pontefract remains one of Britain's most enduring supernatural mysteries. Unlike so many ghost stories, this one is backed by dozens of witnesses, police reports, and generations of investigators who all say the same thing. Something inside that house isn't human, and it isn't done. Even now, people claim to see a black figure at the top of the stairs when the house is empty. And on Halloween night, when the air is thin and the lights flicker, locals say you can sometimes hear a woman screaming echoing from number 30. Maybe Diane. Maybe someone older. Maybe something older. Maybe it's the monk himself. Whatever it is, it's been there for 60 years, waiting for the next family, and waiting for the next knock on the door. So, if you ever find yourself in Pontefract, walk past East Drive. You'll see a quiet little house with a net curtain in the window, a small front garden and a faint hum of streetlights above. But if you feel the air change, the sudden chill, the static prickle, don't look for too long. Because 30 East Drive isn't just haunted, it's hungry. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Your Local Haunt. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, share it. Tell your friends, your enemies, your dog, the lot. Until next time, lock your doors, keep the lights low, and if something knocks from inside the wall, don't knock back.